Today is Tuesday. turn this on. Today is Tuesday, April 23rd. This is a special meeting that's called for to discuss the remediation of mold in the city of Lake Helen, in the City Hall building anyway.
Mayor,
So
it's
if
a
you would
workshop.
give me
It's a workshop.
workshop, what is that
Yes.
called?
Special meeting.
Special meeting,
Yes.
workshop, thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm glad you won't come. I guess we can't have the,
Didn't want to mislead anyone.
not, and especially for our on tape too. Can we stand and have the ceremonial?
Thank you.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You may stand for 1 second. Just have a quick prayer. Ceremonially, Father God, we come together to do the business of the city of Lake Helen. We ask that all things be done tonight will be an uplifting and encouraging to all of our citizens to know that we are doing their work. These things we ask in your Son's name. Amen.
Amen.
So, as a repeat, it is a workshop on the City Hall mold remediation and restoration. There were 4 contractors that were listed. 3 of them are here. I don't know if the 4th one is not going to be making it or not. He's not going to make it. Okay. I'm going to turn it over to our city administrator.
Yes, Mayor and Council, this is a little unusual to have a workshop where you brought in vendors, but they did provide estimates prior to me coming in reference to your issue here at City Hall. And since I only know bits and pieces, and there's kind of a big difference in scope from the different companies, I was actually hoping that they may help educate me and the council to understand the magnitude of the problem and what are the minimal and the maximum solutions so that you can make a decision, not tonight, but at some point of addressing the building.
Okay.
All of the estimates that came in are above a threshold to where we would have to bid anyway. So, none of the companies are being selected here tonight. Those who participate, I appreciate them coming out, and hopefully they will be part of the discussion. Since I'm not a mold expert, give the mayor and commission, I guess, the information and the tools they need to bring this back on an agenda item and decide what you want to do.
Okay. Before we had that done, we had a professional air monitoring that kind of gave us an assessment. So that would be, I guess, the bench line of what we're looking to correct. I'll read it quickly. As per our conversation, this is to our city clerk. As per our conversation regarding the indoor air evaluation report on the 2nd floor at Lake Helen City Hall building, there are currently no published standards of risks associated with exposure to bioaerosols. Bioaerosols samples were collected in quantities measured of microbial presence in the evaluated area and on the outside. Additionally, a sample we collected outside to serve as a baseline indicator of microbial presence in fresh air for comparison to the indoor air samples. To date, neither NIOSH, National Institute of Occupational Safety and Health, nor OSHA has developed recommendations or standards for microbial contamination. In the absence of these standards, researchers recommend that indoor allergen D levels should be less than outdoor levels, where outdoor air is the only source of air for the building and the taxia should be similar or below. Everyone's immune system is different. Therefore, some individuals may be affected differently than others. I appreciate the opportunity of service and look forward to a continued relationship. That said, would we be given a presentation by the Okay, since the three, who was here first? I saw the first guy. Would you like to give us a bit of a capsulated version of what you see and what we can?
First, Mayor, could I just check?
Yes, sir.
Roxanne, did all the companies get a copy of the peer review report? Okay, so everybody was working from the same path. Okay.
And I was actually trying to pull that up on my iPad. If you have a copy, I would just to kind of keep everyone on the same page.
Yeah. How many do you want to do?
Three. And if you could, give us your name and where you represented.
Sounds good. And you want me to join here at the table? Or?
Yeah, as long as I can hear you on here, so speak as loud as you can, appreciate it.
You're good. This I have. My iPad is just a little slow in loading, so sorry. I was just going to use that for the air quality test. Good evening. Good afternoon to everyone. I'm Eli Marks, owner of All Dry Water and Mold. All Dry has been around since 2014, and my company, which is a family-based business, along with my wife, who couldn't join us tonight. This is my son, Mason, who is part of our team as well, and my nephew, who did all the original inspections with Roxanne. So it's kind of a family affair. We have over 50 years collectively in remediation experience, and we, as part of the Volusia County communities, including Lake Helen, we were very interested in helping support any issues around keeping your home, or in this case, the community buildings, clean and safe. And mold, as many of you know, is kind of no joke. There's definitely issues that are part of the city facilities here. And as we did the initial inspections late last year, I just did a cursory view of some of the main areas that you're seeing what's called microbial growth. And the mayor had referenced several of the things that are in the air quality report that are kind of an outcome of what you're seeing visibly in the environment. So mold, first and foremost, is a natural, it's part of nature. That's why they measure the outside and the inside. And it's true that you're looking for, what is in the environment inside versus what you typically see on the outside. Lots of molds are completely harmless. Some you have to pay closer attention to than others, and can cause, concern and harm to human health. So that's kind of why we're here. That's why you wanted us to put an estimate together based on what we're seeing. What we observed is really, you start with, why did this happen? And Roxanne and I have had many conversations around what we're seeing in the different, parts of the building. We believe that a lot of the things that you're seeing, especially on the second floor, are a result of water damage. In many cases, especially in the main room, in those, you don't see them down here, but the air diffusers that you can see in that room, or there's 8 of them, that is a ducting system that most likely is not insulated to an effective level. And those metal ducts will sweat over time. If there's a hot cavity up there, you're going to get condensation on the outside of your ducting. And where you see all that discoloration around the diffusers up there, that's an example of microbial growth. And that's what was tested in an air sample, because once it sits on a surface like that, it can become airborne over time through two ways. One, it can kind of grow on its own, and the spores can kind of fly off and go into the environment on their own. Or when you do active remediation, and if you don't contain the areas as you're doing the work, that can also put it off in the environment. So our job as a company that is licensed to do remediation work in the state of Florida, we also have our EPA designation for lead-safe renovation. I believe this building has been certified as lead-free, so we're in good space there. We have all of the certifications for water damage, odor, and biohazard. We're not dealing with biohazard here, we're just dealing with microbial growth. And it looks like from the report, there's a decent amount of growth in those visible areas. And going back to the original point, and I think any of the other companies would agree with this, we're also going to make recommendations on how to care for this issue so you don't have more water intrusion in the future and have this problem be recurrent. It appears that it's been picked up in the HVAC systems, so a full cleaning of those systems would be recommended by a licensed HVAC contractor. In our case, we worked to put ABC through a quote to give some work on the duct systems and the HVAC systems themselves. And for what we're seeing in the areas that do have issues, including some of the office rooms in the record area upstairs, as well as the museum downstairs, the water damage could be not just linked a lot of it should be linked to those HVAC ducts, but in order to prevent that in the future, we think insulation of those ducts, those metal ducts up on the second floor would be needed, along with full cleaning, in order to reduce the amount of condensation that's coming off those metal ducts. That wouldn't be the work that's in scope for us, because we don't really get into the HVAC systems themselves, but where we would go, once we see what is causing the issue, we would say, you want to take care of that so you don't have this issue recurring in the future. Just like if the roof was leaking, we would say, well, we can do the work to get your place clean or dry, but you got to get the roof fixed first. It's kind of like one step at a time. So ABC has submitted a quote for cleaning of the duct systems. I don't know if they've given a full quote for reducting, but we can clarify that with them. To see if that's needed in the future. As far as our scope of work goes, we've broken it down for information that you've seen in front of you in 4 different spaces. And essentially, the work that we would do would be within a contained space, which means that work could be ongoing within the building in a safe environment, because we would contain off or cordon off with 6mm plastic sheeting, top to bottom, with tape and glue, to ensure that those areas would not be cross-contaminating other areas. We would then, once the areas are cordoned off and secure from a barrier standpoint, we would remove material that has the growth on it to an area beyond any growth visible on either side of the material. In this case, I think the ceilings are a combination of plaster and drywall, but we would remove that beyond a foot beyond anything that is visibly seen. We would then clean all areas of wood studs or other areas that remain. We don't remove structural wood stud material, but we scrub and clean it if there is growth on that. And then use machines called air scrubbers, which actually filter all the air with a HEPA filter to ensure that anything that is airborne is captured in that machine, along with dehumidifiers that would dry any areas that we're putting a wet antimicrobial, basically it's called BioS, and it attacks any of the mold on the source. But we need to dry that to ensure that you've got a dry environment. And then the last piece of the process for any of those materials that remain would be a process called encapsulation. And encapsulation is a really fancy way of saying we take a mold product that envelops any of the studs. It looks like paint. It kind of looks like we're painting, but it's basically an encapsulation product that ensures that no mold can grow back on those surfaces from the application of that growth. So again, the idea is address the cause of the issue, remediate, and put into place things that will keep you safe for years to come, so this doesn't become a recurring issue. Once those steps are done, and that last piece is the encapsulation piece for any of the areas that we are touching, we would then do a final thermal fog with a hot thermal fog machine that allows the particles to go basically in all surfaces It is plant-based, it is harmless to people, pets and plants, but it's what we use to address any mold that may have not been caught in any of the other areas. We can do that at the end of any workday. Typically, it can be an area that is a large space like this. It would be back, you wouldn't want to sit in there in the fog, but it would probably be fine to be back in within 15 minutes. So, not a lot of impact to your day-to-day work structure as it relates to what you're dealing with, with the city business. Roxanne and I, we've talked a lot about, the concern of operating in a safe environment. So we would do that based on the schedule of what, you would see fit. But as far as the day of work goes, I think our scope probably allows for about a week for us to complete all of the tasks. It could be 6 business days. But I do want to say that we are not putting back the material that is taken. So that is another company.
Right.
That's part of our model as well. We don't want to be a company that offers both. We would simply only do the remediation work. And the reason for that is that it's part of the All Dry motto is we want to do the right work and we don't want to do a single step beyond what's required. There are some people in the industry that do what's called over demo, meaning, I'll go back to the large room upstairs. Well, that whole ceiling needs to go. Well, it doesn't really need to go. If there is clean material a foot beyond, you have a viable building that has been here for over 100 years. And some of the work that would need to take place to take the whole ceiling down simply isn't called for. So,
But you won't know that until you tear into it though, right?
and that's a great point. So we are only making our assessment right now based on what we see and on the report. So I'll give a real example. If we go up into the ceiling and we stick our heads up once we get scaffolding and are pulling off that area that you can see that's obviously impacted, we're going to keep going until a foot beyond any impacted area. If you stick your head up and the whole area is covered in growth, it could change. It will change the scope of the project at that point. We tried our best to put scope cameras, little cameras on a wire, to take a look around, but based on the size and the scope of that room, it's just really hard to do without putting full ladder systems and scaffolding in there in order to do that. So it could, the scope of the work could change based on what we find. And that goes with any
Of course.
growth project, that we deal with, but we'll see when we get up there. So, great question.
You did provide the quote for restoration, though you're not going to be doing the work. We do have a quote from you, from your selected organization for the restoration.
For the build back, yeah,
Yes.
you got it. We call it build back, yeah, restoration.
Sorry,
Yeah.
sorry.
It's okay. There's a lot of terms that get thrown around for this. You got the restoration, remediation, that's mold, that's what we're doing, and then the reconstruction or build back or restoration. And that's from any trade construction, I think.
Now, is the problem local throughout the entire building, or is it more isolated to the one side over here where you had a lot of damage?
Yeah, the damage that we saw, I think it appears to have happened over time. I don't know when the first time anyone can recall seeing visible growth,
It's
but
been at least 3 years.
I think it's been 5 or
Yeah,
6 years.
yeah.
Because the roof was leaking for a while before we got the roof done.
yeah, and the roof is fixed now, is my
The roof
But
understanding.
the windows are still
Brand new
leaking.
roof.
Yeah.
Roof, and as you mentioned, windows might be another process to
Yep.
consider.
And windows are a typical source for water intrusion into any property. So that could be a second issue that needs to be addressed as well. Some of the roof, or some of the areas that were leaking from a window standpoint, I think are covered in our estimate as well, but we couldn't waterproof from the outside. We would just do the remediation on the inside. And window treatment, that's gonna be a completely necessary step to ensure that you're not getting additional water into the property. To answer your question, Mayor, I think if you're talking 3 to 5 years, it's definitely in your AC systems.
Oh,
There's,
yeah.
I would not be surprised at all, which is why we made the recommendation for a full cleaning of the HVAC system at the same time that this remediation goes on. That way you're addressing all the ductwork from a cleaning standpoint. ABC has provided a bid for that, as well as the system condensers as well, what you see in those closets. So they would actually detach those machines. We would do any remediation work around, at the perfect time to do the work around those areas where the HVAC closets are. And they take those units to clean any of the components. So at the end of the day, you're addressing the HVAC system, which I think could be impacting air quality in different parts of the building for sure, given the time that you've seen growth in the, it just stands to reason that is happening.
Is there any benefit to having the air conditioner running full time? Because we keep them running so as to keep down the growth. Is that
It's a
something?
great question, and yeah, it does help. It may sound counterintuitive because you're like, well, wait, there's growth in the system, but actually, air conditioners are a natural dehumidifier, and the enemy of mold is dry air. They love moist environments that have, you know, all they need is some type of moisture and a little structure to kind of eat on. And the air running is a natural dehumidifier, so it's not a bad thing that you have, especially at this point, because if it's already picked up in the system, it's not, you know, kind of is what it is.
Mayor, it's general discussion, so I want the other companies, don't feel like you're shut out.
Okay, fantastic. Yeah, with the HVAC issue, I'm in full agreement. The likelihood that microbial growth hasn't spread throughout the remainder of the building is pretty low. And we also have individuals here that may have been affected by it in certain capacities, whether it's allergenic or otherwise. So the likelihood is that it's through the HVAC, it also is being affecting everybody else. Not only is the HVAC really good for dehumidifying, but it's also really important because of your air filters and your air filtration. That is going to be removing potential mold spores that are in the air. That's going to be helping the system in general get rid of some of it. Now the problem is, with the traditional filter that you get from Lowe's or Home Depot or anything along those lines, you're not going to be getting the proper really running at maybe 30 or 40% on a single pass, which Jim and I ended up showing you last time I was here. We have some state-of-the-art filtration that nobody really has access to, that has a 99.725% single pass filtration. It's beyond the level of HABA, and that's something that we're going to be able to get you guys in as a separate add-on after the remediation itself. That's going to enable clean air consistently.
Could I stop you?
Yes.
Give us your name and your company, because it's
All
like
right.
you're a continuation of him.
Sure. So I'm Max Jensen. I am the Vice President of NanoGuard, and I have right here Greg Rabico. He is my Chief Operational Officer here at NanoGuard as well.
Okay.
And if I may, what was your name?
Eli.
Eli. I'm gonna apologize to you right up front. Your presentation was amazing. And now I just stand on your shoulders. because I can agree with almost everything. So what I would like to do is only really right now highlight the areas where we kind of have some variance. I'm not gonna say disagree, because I can tell by his presentation that he's incredibly professional, and my hat's off to you. I love meeting an industry professional who has the type of, etiquette that we have. It's wonderful. So I'll only talk about the places where we disagree. Number one.
Well, before you finish, have you finished? If you finish, then you can start, but he has kind of an overlap here, so I want to keep it.
I think we are at a point where we can transition.
Okay.
If you want, we'll jump back into conversation.
Okay.
I got a question.
Oh, sure.
In your evaluation process, did you evaluate any of the walls?
Yes, and I think there is some scope of work with, because there was a moisture reading. I don't recall the rooms that we saw moisture. I think it might have been.
Should be the two north rooms,
Yeah, and I think that it was
or south rooms, I mean.
Yeah, and upstairs where that piano was, that wall was soaking wet.
yeah, we got moisture readings in a couple of areas. So our quote covers those areas as well. And I don't know if there is something specific that you're looking for on those walls, but if it was wet, at this point, we would probably, in the scope, it would be remediation, inclusive of probably removal of the material on the wall.
Well, I know on the south wall, there was a metal I-beam installed, and over the years, settling and everything has created an opening, the water's coming in from the rains outside into the walls in the two bottom offices. Is, you know, what work will you do to remediate that problem?
Well, if it's water coming from the outside, we are not the company that does waterproofing. So that is something that is needed. It's kind of the same as, I'm glad you got the roof fixed because you're eliminating areas of risk. That would be another area of external risk that you would want to have addressed, and we could recommend some contractors. I don't know if any trade put that in their scope of work or not.
I did show them, so they are aware.
Okay.
They are aware, sorry.
So we did show the contractor that would do the reconstruction inside, that area for Roxanne's name, so they would be addressing that separately. Thank you.
I have a question. On the breakout sheet, where we're dividing remediation, the AC, event repair and restoration, you're all right, correct?
Alter.
My quote on one page is different. It went up.
It probably was a reevaluation.
I imagine, but I want to know why.
I do know that when we first came out, there were two areas that we did not get to see in our initial scope, and we drew the scope of work. When we came back out, it was actually after ABC had done the HVAC inspections, and they noted a couple of things. One was a closet that has an open area up above, and the records room, we just saw it with the mayor. I saw it with the mayor.
And that's understandable.
Yeah.
But it's gonna go, and it may still go up, but I
Right.
was just wondering if you could explain for me.
Yeah, yeah.
I have an idea where we move. Excuse my voice, I-
Oh, no worries.
Allergy problems.
Yeah.
Building problems.
Each room is gonna be a little bit different in terms of scope, just based on the amount of, literally the square footage. It comes down to the square footage of the room, the square footage of the areas that we're addressing. If there's an area, for example, and are you referring to an HVAC closet? I'm not sure which area you're looking at there.
Well, when I got the total on basically what would look like a work order, it was, the price had increased. Now, with the air conditioning company, their price is like $3,700. Can we count on that remaining the same? Did they come out and use that, or they're just, it looks like they did?
That's not replacing ductwork?
It's not replacing ductwork, yeah. No, you're Roxanne's right on that.
So that price isn't correct either, it could be higher.
It's not the same scope as the other two
No,
contracts.
I'm just talking about him.
Right,
Yeah, no,
so
that's not
the
the
what
same
his
scope.
price is not the same scope of work as the other two contractors, that's why it's small, less.
That's just cleaning.
It's just clean.
It's just cleaning. And I can-
Yeah, but I'm just wondering if this price could rise, they came out and they were
Yeah.
busy.
Correct. Our price would not rise based on their work, but their price could rise.
That's what I wanted to know.
And I would say it will rise if they're gonna replace the ducting on the second floor.
So we're just getting estimates today that we can figure on.
That's gonna be,
It will rise.
so that's gonna be really important, just to get apples to apples, because right now there is different scopes of work with Eli, and then you can get a more comprehensive idea and just make the decision that's best for you.
Now, I get that it's a different scope, but
Right.
I'm looking at the cost now
Right.
going up and then maybe changing. And if we get closer to making this all happen, we've certainly got a budget we've got to look at. So we
Absolutely.
need to have, you know, some kind of a range that.
Absolutely.
that stay with it. Okay, that is great.
I have a general question, again, being the layman, other than them knowing the history of their building. if the windows are a problem, another sealing of the building is the issue. Are all of these Band-Aids until they do something about sealing the entire envelope of this building to prevent any further intrusion of any kind of moisture or whatever that creates the mold? Because you're kind of talking about treating what's here, but if you've got issues of windows and doors, and it's not just upstairs. Other night, I was told today, I guess the whole downstairs is,
Downstairs
Still mold,
is,
so-
yes.
it's just maybe we don't see it on this floor, so I'm
Oh,
trying to
her
get,
office.
is it like doing a Band-Aid on something, or you're really talking about that? There's a much bigger scope that needs to be looked at before you even get to clean up and remedial.
Yeah, I mean, based on what you're sharing.
And that's not all three of them, I
Yeah.
want to.
I think you're on the right path with starting with the roof, because the roof is, that's a big one. But you mentioned the I-beam. If there's water intrusion happening there, you're gonna need to address that, sooner than later. Going to your question about the windows, if you've got windows that are actively allowing moisture to come into the building itself, you need to address that. Is it a Band-Aid? I'm not here to tell you need all new windows. That's gonna be a decision for you all to make, because there's a lot of factors in that. The goal is not to just completely seal the building, in my opinion. You want a building to be able to breathe. And in fact, there's been a lot of evidence of new construction where it's so tight and it doesn't allow for a building to actually have a little give and take from a breathability standpoint, that it actually does make it harder for it to stay a healthy environment. So you're not looking for like a dome over this place, that just doesn't allow any airflow, especially a building this old. You've got a historic building here that has a lot there. So I'm not sure if I'm answering your question completely, but I wouldn't recommend, a complete sealing of. You want to be thorough with all your work, but you're not going for perfection when it comes to.
And for the longevity of the building's 100 years old, the windows have got to be 100 years old. They cannot be insulation, they cannot be, efficient.
Yeah.
So if we're talking about saving money, we can also consider saving money by having less of an electric bill, because the windows are definitely, whatever our air conditioner puts out, our windows doesn't stop, it just goes right out.
It goes right, okay.
So like my grandmother used to
You
say.
got a lot of factors then in your decision.
My grandmother used to say, when I walk out the door, what are you trying to air condition the whole neighborhood? So that's what we're doing in a sense with the windows that are not as efficient as they should be.
And engineering and architecture came a long way, for sure.
When the building was built, it was efficient for that time period.
Right.
Yeah, what he's saying is absolutely the truth. When you have a building that's sealed too tightly, I mean, there's when you open the windows, let fresh air in, that's a real thing, right? If you have the same air circulating inside of an environment without any mix, what we call, actually when we're doing remediations, we call it makeup air. You need fresh air coming in, right? So if it's too tight, then that becomes an issue as well, but I'm not sure that that's what you're asking. What you're kind of asking is, hey, if we have water intrusion coming from the outside, independent of the source, does that need to be done before you guys do your work? The blunt answer is yes, it should be, absolutely. But that's why All Day and us as well, and I'm sure that others here as well, have our third-party vendor partners that we work alongside that can help you every step of the way so that you